Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Marla.
Hello, Marla. So glad to have you with us this morning.
I'm glad to be here.
Marla, can you see Sri Ramakrishna in the top of that picture?
In your screen?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Good morning, Shankara ji.
Good morning, Balakrishna.
Good morning, Brother Shankara.
Good morning, Haima. Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma.
I'm still not able to.
That looks like it might be, I can't tell who that is. Oh, is that Haima?
Yes,
Aha.
finally worked. Because I closed my camera yesterday. That's why I finally figured it out, Brother Shankara.
Aha.
Now it's working.
Well, we're glad to have you back with us.
Yes.
There's Justine. Okay, we'll wait until just a couple of minutes after 8 to start, just to let everybody who's going to join us, or at least the relatively prompt ones.
Hari Om, Brother Shankara.
Hello, Naveen. Hello, Swayam.
Namaste.
Namaste, dear.
Oh, how come my video is off?
Hello, Uma. Glad you got it working.
Finally. Okay. Yes, I could. My grandson guided me.
Oh, very good. Well, it's good to have those youngsters. 'Cause
Yes,
they're the ones who know this stuff.
yes, they do.
Somebody's got some sort of device talking in the background there.
Oh, yes. That's
Whatever that is, please turn it off.
what do I do?
Umaji, left corner on the bottom, on the left corner, you will have a sign of speaker.
See,
On the left bottom,
uh-huh.
the speaker sign, which is a mute. If you press on that, it will mute.
Or am I?
It has a microphone, not a speaker.
Oh, sorry, yeah, microphone.
Right.
Just
It's like a
click
toggle.
on the microphone and it will mute the machine.
Yeah, many of, I don't know if all of you know this, but if you don't mute it and you move around, Brother Shankara will disappear and you'll appear on the screen. So.
Brother Shankar, people could also use this time if they want to play with their display to be able to more than one person to check on your menu to do that. You could do that also. So you would make your menu appear either at the top or the bottom, and you'll see a little icon that looks like a little person in a box. And if you click on that, you'll be able to see everybody displayed at once, or at least 9 people displayed at once.
Okay. Well, here we go.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
Uma did have herself muted, but I think she unmuted herself again. I was going to say that.
No,
Or she'd like to, I didn't know if she knew.
I have mute on my computer.
No, we can hear you, dear.
Okay, so I'm fine.
Okay, very good. All right.
All right. Big
All right, here we go. First of all, good morning and welcome. I'm going to do the opening prayer, and then we're going to hold a moment of silence for all those who are suffering in the world,
Yes.
for any reason, of course, but especially due to the dreadful transformation that's taking place because of the coronavirus. So I'll start with the prayer.
Yes.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the divine being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the divine being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Well, somebody has started a machine running in the kitchen, so I'm going to go and close the door between the office and the kitchen. I'll be right back.
Well, he's gone. I don't know if this helps, but in the right-hand corner, or wherever you have his small image of Brother Shankara, there's a small blue box in the top right side. If you hit the small blue box and you hit pin video, it won't go off of his image for the lecture, even if someone makes noise. So that's a helpful thing too. If you look in the blue box and hit pin video.
Okay, have you got a still image of me of me, or do you have a moving image of me?
You're moving, and you're in the little boxes that show all the participants.
Okay.
In the top right-hand corner, you can hit pin.
Thank you, Justine.
Okay.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Of course, we have announcements. Just a reminder, as a result of the coronavirus, the center is closed except for evening arati and private practice of meditation. Classes and talks are live streamed using the Zoom app. You can see the center's website, Facebook, or e-newsletter. You will find instructions on how to download the free app to your phone, tablet, or computer if you don't already have that operating, and I think all of you probably do. That's the only way you'd be hearing me. Our new online Saturday class has been very well attended. Thank you for those who attended. We're studying a collection of talks by Swami Vivekananda called Realizing God. As you know, it's likely we'll be encouraged to shelter in place for some weeks to come. During that time, we will be inviting monks and nuns from other centers to offer us talks and retreats using the Zoom app, so they won't have to stir from their centers. They'll be able to speak with us over this Zoom, just as I'm doing to you now. We'll keep you updated through the website, the Facebook page, and the e-news. Just a couple of other announcements. Next week, April 12th, is Easter. I'll speak on resurrection. On the 19th, the following Sunday, Dr. Bhagarat Majmudar will talk with us via Zoom online about what it's like in the ambulances, emergency rooms, ICUs, and hospital wards where medical professionals are risking their lives for us every day. They are doing everything they can to control this coronavirus crisis, often working without sufficient equipment, supplies, or support, and often working 11, 12, or more hours a day. It's like they're back in their residency. And surgeons are working in ERs and ICUs and so on. It's just really a remarkable time for those people in the medical profession. So because we wanted to start this morning with the chant, we won't do it again now as we normally do. But let me just say again, welcome to anyone who's joined us. And I'll say that April is a month for the study of Bhakti Yoga. A Bhakti yogi, a bhakta, establishes a devotional relationship with God through study, prayer, ritual, and worship. As a bhakta, you practice giving every action, thought, emotion, perception, and tendency a Godward turn. All your energies and attributes, both positive and negative, are offered to the divine presence. Your prayer is for the blissful self-surrender of a child in its mother or father's arms, and then ultimately union with your beloved. That's the bhakta's way and path. In March, we departed from our usual routine of taking up one of the 4 yogas for detailed study. Instead, over 4 weeks, we introduced a parallel tradition of spiritual discernment and realization as taught by a brujo of the Toltec lineage, Don Juan Matus. The final talk in this series for this morning is Stopping the World and the Journey to Ixtlan. The Upanishads, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, and the lives of avatars and saints let us know there is a level of awareness far beyond our experiences of everyday life. It is called by various names: Samadhi, Turiya, ecstasy. Swami Vivekananda spoke of it as superconsciousness. So we'll start this morning with something familiar. We study it at least once a year: Vivekananda's explanation of yoga and the attainment of superconsciousness. This is from the Swami's book, Raja Yoga. It starts with the first aphorism. Yoga is restraining the mind stuff, chitta, from taking various forms, vrittis. This is the Swami now speaking. I'll tell you when it's the end of the quote. A good deal of explanation is necessary here. We have to understand what chitta is and what the vrittis are. The sense organs, indriyas, together with the mind, manas, the determinative faculty, buddhi, and egoism, ahamkara, form the group called the antakarana, the internal instrument. They are but various processes in the mind stuff called chitta. The waves of thought in chitta are called vrittis, literally whirlpool. Now, we say waves of thought, or the Swami says waves of thought, but it actually is the vibrations throughout your body. As we'll see when we come to Carlos Castaneda's description of stopping the world, it isn't just these thoughts that stop. That comes first. But ultimately, all sensation throughout the body stops. So all of these vrittis, when your toe hurts, that's a vritti. When you have a thought of the past, that's a vritti. All of our thoughts, feelings, and perceptions are vrittis. So these are but various processes in the mind stuff called citta. The waves of thought, feeling, and perception in the citta are called vrittis, literally whirlpool. What is thought? Thought is a force, as is gravitation or repulsion. From the infinite storehouse of force in nature, the instrument called citta takes hold of some of this force, absorbs it, and sends it out as thought. You are the only sentient being. Let's absorb that. You, speaking to the inner being in each of us, you are the only sentient being. One sentient being. You are the only sentient being. Mind is only the instrument through which you catch the external world. And the Swami held up a book. Take this book. As a book, it does not exist outside. What exists outside is unknown and unknowable. The unknowable furnishes the suggestion that gives a blow to the mind, and the mind gives out the reaction in the form of a book. The real universe is the occasion of the reaction of the mind. A book form or an elephant form or a man form is not outside. Now we understand what is meant by these vrittis. The real man is behind the mind. The mind is the instrument in his hands. It is his intelligence that is percolating through the mind. Thus you understand what is meant by citta. It is the mind stuff. And vrittis are the waves and ripples rising in it when external causes impinge on it. These vrittis are our universe. And this is so very important to keep in mind, not just for us as spiritual aspirants on a daily basis, but to understand what we're going to hear from Don Juan Matus, his friend and associate Don Gennaro, and Carlos Castaneda. These waves and ripples rising in the mind stuff are our universe. And so these vrittis are everything that you experience. This is the world that Don Juan taught his apprentices to stop. When we talk about stopping the world, this is what Don Juan is talking about, this outside world. When you learn to still these vrittis, this is the goal of Raja Yoga's practices, your universe disappears. What replaces it, according to the yogis, is not darkness and emptiness, but a great silence, radiant, unbounded, blissful superconsciousness. And because it is unlimited, it cannot be described by the limited tool of language. Don Juan called this feat of reaching this great silence, stopping the world. He taught his apprentices techniques for accomplishing it and helped them prepare for the awesome next step. His apprentice, Carlos Castaneda, wrote of that complete life transformation as the journey to Ixtlan. This morning, we will conclude our study of Don Juan and his teachings with two narrations. Castaneda's description of how he finally stopped the world, and Don Gennaro's story of his completion of a brujo's journey to freedom. For those who are joining us late in this series, a little review. Don Juan and his fellow teacher, Don Gennaro, were brujos. A brujo or bruja is a person who is in command of power. Don Juan and Don Gennaro had many apprentices. One of them was Carlos Castaneda, who wrote the book we're drawing from, Journey to Ixtlan. Castaneda tells us that a brujo's basic premise, everything flows from this premise. The brujo's basic premise is that the world of everyday life is not real or out there as you believe it is. Just as the Swami said about the book is not outside. It is a suggestion that the mind turns into the book. A brujo explains that reality, the world as you know it, is only a description that was relentlessly taught to you in childhood until the moment when you were capable of perceiving the world as it was described to you. At that moment, you became a member. From then on, your day-to-day life was experienced as an endless flow of perceptual interpretations that, as a member, you knew how to make in common and in cooperation with the rest of us. This point of view is familiar. In Sanskrit, the term for these perceptual interpretations, and it's a very precise parallel. In Sanskrit, the term for these perceptual interpretations is upadi, which means imposition or limitation. We limit reality, we limit the possibilities of reality by our descriptions of that reality. We've learned these descriptions, we share them in common to a large degree, and in Sanskrit, they're called upadis, and they are the nature, the upadis are the fabric of the ignorance which spiritual practice is to dispel. Don Juan and Don Gennaro taught their apprentices how to overcome the limitations of their inherited, imposed description. He called this achievement stopping the world. This too is not a new idea for us. The Mandukya Upanishad speaks of it as cessation of all phenomena. That's a quote, cessation of all phenomena, mantra 8. Patanjali's Yoga Sutra says the goal is to be independent of limitation through detachment from all thought forms. The Sanskrit word is kaivalya. Here is Carlos Castaneda's experience of stopping the world, his first awesome step toward that state of being, kaivalya. Don Juan said, and this is now taken from the book. I'll tell you, I'll be moving in and out of quotes from the book, but we'll start with this. Don Juan said, "This is my gesture for you," he said, holding the grip he had on my hand for an instant. "Now you must go by yourself into those friendly mountains." He pointed with his chin to the distant range of mountains toward the southeast. He said that I had to remain there until my body told me to quit and then return to his house. He let me know that he did not want me to say anything or to wait any longer by shoving me gently in the direction of my car. "What am I supposed to do there?" I asked. He did not answer, but looked at me, shaking his head. "No more of that," he finally said. I drove south and then east, following the roads I had always taken when driving with Don Juan. I parked my car around the place where the dirt road ended, and then I hiked on a familiar trail until I reached a high plateau. I had no idea what I was to do there. I began to meander, looking for a resting place. I then stayed motionless for perhaps an hour. My thoughts began to diminish by degrees until I was no longer talking to myself. This endless narration that goes on in our minds. My thoughts began to diminish by degrees until I was no longer talking to myself. I began scanning the area with crossed eyes. This is a technique that Don Juan had taught him for separating the images in the eyes and seeing things that we wouldn't ordinarily notice. I began scanning the area with crossed eyes, and after a short walk, I came upon another high plateau, and I stayed in the surrounding mountains all day, without knowing what to do or what to expect. I came back to the flat rock, the resting place he had found, at dusk. I knew that if I spent the night there, I would be safe. The next day, I ventured farther east into the high mountains. By late afternoon, I came to another even higher plateau. I thought I had been here before. After carefully selecting a suitable place, I sat down to rest at the edge of a barren, rocky area. I felt very warm and peaceful there. I lay down on my stomach and rested my head on my arm. The sun was already low. My eyes were tired. Only the wind hissed between the branches and leaves of the chaparral. I looked up, turned to my left in a quick and involuntary fashion, and caught a glimpse of a faint shadow or flicker on a rock a few feet away. At first, I paid no attention to it, but then I realized that the flicker had been to my left. If you remember, Don Juan taught Castaneda that our death is always waiting for us. He even used the term stalking us, and is to our left at a distance of a few feet away. I realized the flicker had been to my left. I turned again suddenly and was able to clearly perceive a shadow on the rock. I had the weird sensation that the shadow instantly slid down to the ground and the soil absorbed it as a blotter dries an ink blot. A chill ran down my back. The thought crossed my mind that death was watching me. I had an extraordinary moment of elation. My elation and joy were so overwhelming that I began to weep. Don Juan was right. He had always been right. I was living in a most mysterious world, and like everyone else, I was a most mysterious being, and yet I was no more important than a dung beetle. Earlier in the first day, he'd had an experience with actually seeing that he and the dung beetle were on a par, as he put it. This was part of this, what Don Juan refers to as losing our self-importance. He saw that in the face of the great mystery of life and death, that he was no more important than the dung beetle. I was a most mysterious being, and yet I was no more important than a dung beetle. I wiped my eyes, and as I rubbed them with the back of my hand, I saw a man or something which had the shape of a man. It was to my right, about 50 yards away. I sat up straight to see. The sun was almost on the horizon, and its yellowish glow prevented me from getting a clear view. I again strained to see if I could distinguish the person that seemed to be hiding from me, but I could only detect a dark shape against the bushes. I shielded my eyes by placing my hands above them. The brilliancy of the sunlight changed at that moment. And then I realized that what I was seeing was only an optical illusion, a play of shadows and foliage. This is returning to the world of ordinary thought. I moved my eyes away and saw a coyote. I moved my eyes away and saw a coyote calmly trotting across the field. The coyote was around the spot where I thought I had seen the man. It moved about 50 yards in a southerly direction, and then it stopped, turned, and began walking toward me. I yelled a couple of times to scare it away, but it kept on coming. I had a moment of apprehension. I thought it might be rabid, and I even considered gathering some rocks to defend myself. When the animal was 10 to 15 feet away, I noticed that it was not agitated in any way. On the contrary, it seemed calm and unafraid. It slowed down its gait, coming to a halt barely 4 or 5 feet from me. We looked at each other, and then the coyote came even closer. Its brown eyes were friendly and clear. I sat down on the rocks, and the coyote stood almost touching me. I was dumbfounded. I had never seen a wild coyote that close, and the only thing that occurred to me at that moment was to talk to it. I began as one would talk to a friendly dog, and then I thought that the coyote talked back to me. I had the absolute certainty that it had said something. I felt confused, but I did not have time to ponder on my feelings because the coyote talked again. It was not that the animal was voicing words the way I'm accustomed to hearing words being voiced by a human being. It was rather a feeling that it was talking. But it was not like a feeling, that one has when a pet seems to communicate with its master either. The coyote actually said something. It relayed a thought, and that communication came out in something quite similar to a sentence. I had said, "How are you, little coyote?" And I had thought I had heard the animal respond, "I'm all right, and you?" Then the coyote repeated the sentence, and I jumped to my feet. The animal did not make a single movement. It was not even startled by my sudden jump. Its eyes were still friendly and clear. It laid down on its stomach and tilted its head and asked, "Why are you afraid?" I sat down facing it, and I carried on the weirdest conversation. I sat down facing it, and I carried on the weirdest conversation I had ever had. Finally, it asked me what I was doing there, and I had said I had come to stop the world. The coyote said, "Qué bueno," which in Spanish means wonderful. The coyote said, "Qué bueno." Then the full weight of the impossibility of what was happening struck me, and my mind wobbled. The coyote stood up, and our eyes met. I stared fixedly into them. I felt they were pulling me, and suddenly the animal became iridescent. It began to glow. The coyote was a fluid, liquid, luminous being. Its luminosity was dazzling. I wanted to cover my eyes with my hands to protect them, but I could not move. The luminous being touched me in some undefined part of myself, and my body experienced such an exquisite, indescribable warmth and well-being that it was as if the touch had made me explode. I became transfixed. Now listen carefully. This is it. This is it. I became transfixed. I could not feel my feet or my legs or any part of my body, yet something was sustaining me erect. I have no idea how long I stayed in that position. In the meantime, the luminous coyote and the hilltop where I stood melted away. I had no thoughts or feelings. Everything had been turned off, and I was floating freely. I stayed on the hilltop in a state of ecstasy for what appeared to be an endless time. Yet the whole event may have lasted only a few minutes, perhaps only as long as the sun shone before it reached the horizon. But to me, it seemed an endless time. I felt something warm and soothing oozing out of my world and out of my own body. I knew I had discovered a secret. It was so simple. I experienced an unknown flood of feelings. Never in my life had I had such a divine euphoria, such peace, such an encompassing grasp. And yet I could not put the discovered secret into words or even into thoughts, but my body knew it. Now, this is what is said always by those who manage to enter that great silence. There's no way to describe in our usual human limited language what is found there. Castaneda goes on. Then I either fell asleep or I fainted. When I again became aware of myself, I was lying on the rocks. I stood up. The world was as it had always been. It was getting dark, and I automatically started on my way back to the car. Don Juan was alone in the house when I arrived the next morning. I immediately began to narrate to him the extraordinary experiences I had had. He listened with obvious interest. "You have simply stopped the world," he commented after I finished my account. We remained silent for a moment. And then Don Juan said, "I had to thank Don Gennaro for helping me." He seemed to be unusually pleased with me. He patted my back repeatedly and chuckled. Now I'll go back. I didn't want to say this before because it would have led our minds away from what was about to happen. But the day before Carlos Castaneda went into the mountains and had the experience just narrated, Don Gennaro had performed some awesome feats of power. I encourage you to read the book if you'd like to know the details. But he had done some things that are simply not possible. And this is what Don Juan meant when he said that Don Gennaro had helped him. He had done something he had done some things, several things, that Castaneda's eyes could not believe. His mind could not comprehend or even begin to get itself around. Don Gennaro was that powerful a brujo. He could do these things as casually as you or I might wash the dishes. So he had shown Castaneda that his descriptions of the world were inadequate to experience or understand everything that could happen in front of his eyes and mind. And so I said the final part of this is this journey to Ixtlan. After Castaneda had done what he did in the mountains and come back and told Don Juan about it, Don Juan persuaded Don Gennaro to tell his story of his journey to freedom. This is Don Gennaro's story. Now, there is the concept here of an ally. Every tradition has its own ways of explaining how these things happen. Tibetan Buddhism and the South American, actually, it isn't so much comes from Tibetan Buddhism as it comes from the predecessor spiritual tradition that existed in Tibet called Bön, has very similar ideas to this idea of an ally. Swami Prabhavananda was very familiar with the idea of an ally and felt that he very much had one, which would take form from time to time and protect him. But rather than go off on an excursion in that direction, let's hear Don Gennaro's story. So there's this ally that you have to, within this Toltec tradition, you have to be able to, so to speak, tackle and subdue this ally. Then it will help you. So this starts that narration. What happened when you grabbed your ally, Don Gennaro? I asked. It was a powerful jolt, Don Gennaro said after a moment's hesitation. Never would I have imagined it was going to be like that, he went on. It was something like nothing I can tell. After I grabbed it, we began to spin. The ally made me whirl, but I did not let go. We spun through the air with such speed and force that I couldn't see anymore. Everything was foggy. The spinning went on and on and on. Suddenly I felt I was standing on the ground again. I looked at myself. The ally had not killed me. I was in one piece. I was myself. I even knew that I had succeeded. At long last, I had an ally. I jumped up and down with delight. What a feeling it was. Then I looked around to find out where I was. The surroundings were unknown to me. Now, understand, this story is about something that's indescribable. So this is metaphor, but it is true. As somebody said, of a storyteller's story, is that true? And the story said, well, it may not be true, but it's accurate. Then I looked around to find out where I was. The surroundings were unknown to me. I thought the ally must have taken me through the air and dumped me somewhere very far from the place where we started to spin. I oriented myself. I thought that my home must be toward the east, so I began to walk in that direction. It was still early. The encounter with the ally had not taken too long. Very soon I found a trail and then saw a bunch of men and women coming toward me. They were Indians. I thought they were Mazatec Indians. They surrounded me and asked me where I was going. I'm going home to Ixtlan, I said to them. Are you lost? Someone asked. I am. I said. Why? Because Ixtlan is not that way. Ixtlan is in the opposite direction. We ourselves are going there, someone else said. Join us, they all said. We have food. Don Gennaro stopped talking and looking at me as if he were waiting for me to ask a question. Well, what happened? I asked. Did you join them? No, I didn't, he said, because they were not real. I knew it right away. I knew it right away the minute they came to me. There was something in their voices, in their friendliness that gave them away, especially when they asked me to join them. So I ran away. They called me and begged me to come back. Their pleas became haunting, and I kept running away from them. Who were they, I asked. People, Don Gennaro replied cuttingly, except that they were not real. They were like apparitions, Don Juan explained, like phantoms. Suddenly, I realized I had an ally. This is Don Gennaro again. Suddenly, I realized that I had an ally, and there was nothing that the phantoms could do to me. Other phantoms lurched out and tried to make me trip over precipices, but my will was stronger than they were. They must have sensed that because they stopped pestering me. After a while, they simply stood by my path. From time to time, some of them would step toward me, but I stopped them with my will. And then they quit bothering me altogether. What happened after that, Don Gennaro asked. I kept on walking, he said, factually. It seemed that he had finished his tale, and there was nothing he wanted to add. I asked him why was the fact that they had offered him food a clue to their being phantoms. He said that the tone of their voices, their eagerness to lure him out, and the manner in which the phantoms talked about food were the clues, and that he knew that because his ally was helping him. He asserted that by himself alone, he would have never noted these peculiarities. Were those phantoms allies, Don Gennaro, I asked? No, they were people. People, but you said they were phantoms. I said they were no longer real. After my encounter with the ally, nothing was really, nothing, after my encounter with the ally, nothing was real anymore. We were quiet for a long time. What was the final outcome of that experience, Don Gennaro, I asked. Final outcome? I mean, when and how did you finally reach Ixtlan? Both Don Gennaro and Don Juan broke into laughter at once. So that's the final outcome for you, Don Juan remarked. Let's put it this way. There was no final outcome to Gennaro's journey. There will never be any final outcome. Gennaro is still on his way to Ixtlan. Don Gennaro glanced at me with piercing eyes and then turned his head to look into the distance toward the south. I will never reach Ixtlan, he said. His voice was firm but soft, almost a murmur. Yet in my feelings, I sometimes think I'm just one step from reaching it. Yet I never will. If in my journey, I don't even find the familiar landmarks I used to know, nothing is any longer the same. Don Juan and Don Gennaro looked at each other. There was something so sad about their look. In my journey to Ixtlan, I find only phantom travelers, he said softly. I looked at Don Juan. I had not understood what Don Gennaro meant. Everyone Gennaro finds on his way to Ixtlan is only an ephemeral being, Don Juan explained. Take you, for instance. You're a phantom. Your feelings and your eagerness are those of people. That's why he says he encounters only phantom travelers on his journey to Ixtlan. I suddenly realized that Don Gennaro's journey was a metaphor. Your journey to Ixtlan is not real, then, I said. It is real, Don Gennaro interjected. The travelers are not real. Mm-hmm. He pointed to Don Juan with a nod of his head and said emphatically, this is the only one who is real. The world is real only when I am with this one. Don Juan smiled. Don Gennaro was telling his story to you, Don Juan said, because yesterday you stopped the world and he thinks that you also saw, but you are such a fool that you don't know it yourself. I kept on telling him that you're weird and that sooner or later you will see at any time in your next, at any rate, in your next meeting with the ally, you will survive the shock. Don Juan is commenting on the fact that Castaneda, in meeting the coyote, had met the ally. At any rate, in your next meeting with the ally, you will survive the shock. Since you're strong and have been living like a warrior, you will find yourself alive in an unknown land. Then, as is natural to all of us, the first thing you'll want to do is start on your way back to Los Angeles. There's no way to go back to Los Angeles. When you left there, what you left there is lost forever. By then, of course, you will be a brujo, but that's no help. At a time like that, what's important to all of us is the fact that hear what we're told over and over about the person of wisdom. By then, of course, you will be a brujo, but that's no help. At a time like that, what's important to all of us is the fact that everything we love or hate or wish for has been left behind. Yet the feelings in a man do not change or die. And the brujo starts on his way back home knowing that he will never reach it, knowing that no power on earth, not even his death, will deliver him to the place, the things, the people he loved. That's what Gennaro told you. I looked at Don Juan. He was gazing at me. Only a warrior, only as a warrior can one survive the path of knowledge, he said, because the art of the warrior is to balance the terror of being a man with the wonder of being a man. I gazed at the two of them, each in turn. Their eyes were clear and peaceful. They had summoned a wave of overwhelming nostalgia. And when they seemed to be on the verge of exploding into passionate tears, they held back that tidal wave. For an instant, I think I saw. I saw the loneliness of man as a gigantic wave which had been frozen in front of me, held back by an invisible wall of a metaphor. For an instant, I think I saw. I saw the loneliness of man as a gigantic wave which had been frozen in front of me, held back by the invisible wall of a metaphor. I'm just going to interject here. If you want to get another glimpse of what this means, this metaphor means, read Dylan Thomas's poem, If I Were Tickled by the Rub of Love. If I Were Tickled by the Rub of Love, Dylan Thomas. The last line is, man, be my metaphor. My sadness was so overwhelming that I felt euphoric. I embraced them. Don Gennaro smiled and stood up. Don Juan also stood up and gently put his hand on my shoulder. We're going to leave you here, he said. Do what you think is proper. The ally will be waiting for you at the edge of that plain. I'll leave it to you to discover whether Castaneda kept that appointment. If you want to read the rest of the book, you can download a PDF of it for free from the web, or you can buy a copy if you like to have a. You can buy it for very little on the. It's really a very fascinating book. And the way of Don Juan and of Don Gennaro, the way of the Toltec, and the warrior, the seeker after power, not power in the worldly sense at all. You see what the power is about. It's about freedom. Freedom from the definition. Freedom from independence from all limitation, including that of being a brujo. As Don Juan said, even that doesn't help. It's just another description, a more powerful one, a less limited one, but nevertheless, it too is a description. It's the brujo's description, the brujo's explanation. So with that, this concludes this series of 5 talks on Don Juan and the journey to Ixtlan. What has arisen in you as a result of this? This is always the best part for us all, when we speak with one another, when the wonderful things that are part of you, each of us being one facet of the illimitable jewel of Brahman, to use our language for it. What thoughts have arisen? What questions? What comments?
I think I can start.
Yes, Uma?
You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Great. First, it is such a very eerie feeling listening to this Don Juan's journey. It is something that I deeply feel, but I cannot put my finger on what is that I'm feeling. Just like Don Juan, when he encountered that, what was that, coyote?
That luminous being, the ally.
Yes. And when he saw that light piercing through his eyes, and the way he felt that they communicated with each other.
Yes.
Without spelling it out. That what he said was understood, but not describable. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, my 2 observations. First, was that experience of meeting with coyote in any way resembling what in Vedanta we call Samadhi? Was it?
Yes. Yes.
A moving experience.
It was in a state of Samadhi, yes.
Okay.
As you remember, Sri Ramakrishna said, there are thousands of kinds of Samadhi. There's not just the 2, Savikalpa, Nirvikalpa. Those are baskets. There are many different forms of Samadhi. but it was definitely an experience of the fourth.
Yes.
It was an experience of beyond the ordinary.
Yes. And my second observation, what Eli would mean in Christianity, angel.
Mm.
Can we say an Eli is a divine messenger or angel?
Yes, the thing that comes right away to mind is guardian angel.
Okay.
But the Christianity that I studied as a boy did not make much emphasis on that. It was a more self-determined way of being rather than relying on Methodism is a way of studying and a way of being that is more self-reliant, and but it definitely relies on Christ. So Christ is the ally, rather than than some subset of Christ's power as represented by angels. Hello, Bhagirath in the background. Hello there.
Oh, you can see me.
I can see you, yes.
He's always in the background, right?
If not in the foreground, in the background.
I wish.
So thank you, Uma. You're absolutely right about those things.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a kind of a question.
Yes.
So after he had had the experience, and this is Don Gennaro, after he had the experience and he was headed to Ixtlan, what did he mean by like phantoms? Obviously these were, for all intents and purposes, real people. And even the, like, it almost seemed like he meant that people were trying at that point to deceive him or pull him, I guess, off the path. So I'm trying to understand that a little bit better.
When we first are in the state of realization, it's you'll find this described in Adi Shankaracharya's Crest Jewel of Discrimination, Vivekachudamani. It's a very precarious place. The senses and that which is ruled by the senses still is a powerful pull. We just heard it the other day when we were studying chapter 2 of the Gita. Even a man who knows the way can be pulled from the way. Even a ship can be blown by the winds off its course. So Don Gennaro, with the help of his ally, was seeing these people not as enemies. Notice he didn't fight with them. He simply avoided them and kept them at a distance with his will. So this is part of the description of what happens to a person. And as time goes on, one becomes very established in their. This is why Don Gennaro and Don Juan could have what they call these gestures with their apprentices, who were clearly people from that were coming to them from a worldly. And of course, this was in their compassion, remembering, as Don Juan talks about in this book a little bit, and in other books more, about how he has compassion for those who used to be the way he was. So that's why when a promising student shows up, as Castaneda showed up to Don Juan, then they make an attempt to educate them, to show them a way toward greater freedom. Thanks for that. Good, very good question, Keith. Thanks. Anybody else? How are we doing for time? Well, it's just 2 minutes after 12. Very good.
Brother
Anybody
Shankara,
else?
Brother,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Bhagirath.
Okay. I think two things. Number one, if you remember, long ago, whenever we used to go on Sunday for any church session, we'll be best dressed,
Yes.
formally dressed, tie, jacket, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
From that one, we went to the second one, like in Vedanta session, you come casually.
Yes.
Until we dressed up, and that's how we came over the last several Sundays. Now this is a home session that you are conducting, so we do not even have to be properly dressed. One by one, this is an opportunity for us to be undressed, not to be tightly in a rigid way of presenting ourselves to be seen, but think openly, think informally, and you could see how different minds are coming together.
Yes.
And that to me is fantastic. It is truly not only virtual, it's a virtuous of all of us together. And that
well said.
about the yearly experience which Uma was talking about, I think God has granted us the ability to have that yearly experience. But
Yes.
we just disregard it. We draw a hood over it so that we do not see it, with the result that by the time we die, the real fun of being alive, we never have experienced. And that's
How well said, Bhagirath. Exactly. How well said. When I read Castaneda's first book, which was called The Teachings of Don Juan, that was his very first book, my body literally shook with something of this eerie recognition. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. My body shook. And so this is, there's something very powerful here. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been worthwhile to present it all to you. If you go back over the talks, the restraints and the observances that Don Juan's apprentices were taught are very, very strong, very appropriate, and very, very useful for anyone who wishes to make progress on the spiritual path. Erasing your personal history, losing your self-importance. Those are two that, our personal history is nothing more than a collection of upadis, nothing more than a collection of descriptions and limitations that we have memorized and thought of and categorized ourselves thereby. And as Vivekananda said, a man is a fool who swallows his own spit. That is to say, who believes what he says about himself. We are not, as the Buddha pointed out, we're not the person we were in the last instant, let alone all of these memories and recollections we have of our past.
But this kind of experience that you narrated is not granted only to the privileged people.
No.
I think it is our birthright.
You
start working from earth, you will see it even before you die, and therefore you escape the fear of death also.
Yes, precisely.
And that is the whole idea in our Vedantic group discussion.
Yes. If you know, I quoted briefly from Swamiji's introduction to Raja Yoga. If you read that full introduction, he talks about how the experiences that you will achieve through the practice of Raja Yoga will free you from the fear of death.
Mhm.
And you will come to see, as Don Juan teaches, death as an advisor. No time for foolishness. Time for foolishness. If I'm going to extract the most from this awesome gift of human life, no time to fritter it away.
Wonderful. Yes, yes. And is this the final message, or that's what I derive? That don't get too much worked up about the result of the journey. Destination, I mean, journey is the destination.
Yes.
Because the way we get to the point is immaterial compared to what we step by step go through, learn from, hopefully. And that spiritual journey itself is what life is about.
Absolutely, Uma, you're so right. The destination is something that exists only in our thoughts. It is no more real than any of the rest of our thoughts.
Right.
What is real is what we are open to and truly and deeply experience
Yes.
right now. And that's why I am recommending this book, not only Journey to Ixtlan, but I've been mentioning virtually at every class and every talk, a wonderful book called Love Poems from God. Love Poems from God. It is the testimony of 12 realized souls, 12 saints from the traditions around the world and over the millennia, from Rabia to Tukaram, from Saint John of the Cross to Hafiz, from Saint Teresa of Avila to Mirabai. These are 12 of these saints, and their testimony about what they find on the other side of realization. And it is so inspiring in terms of empowering us and encouraging us to make the effort to reach where they have found.
Could you repeat the title?
Love Poems from God.
Okay.
The author, well, actually not author, but translator, is a man named Daniel Landinsky, Landinsky, Daniel Landinsky.
Okay.
I don't remember the publisher, but you can find it. You just Google it, you'll pop right up. Anybody else out there that wants to make a contribution to this wonderful conversation?
Hello, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Swayam. Hello, good to see you.
I just wanted to mention that the talk by Swami Sarvadevanandaji today is on destroy the impressions of the mind. And it seems like a coincidence that kind of ties into stopping the world.
Oh, that is definite. It's exactly the same message, just different language, different metaphor for exactly the same thing. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
When is Sarvadevananda's talk today? Is this something we can attend?
Yeah, it's live streamed.
And then it'll be on YouTube. The question I had was, the technique that he describes of scanning with the crossed eyes, is that comparable to meditation on the point between the eyebrows?
I don't know, dear. I've never thought about it. You can find it described in detail in the book about the use of it. What it is I don't think it's, just thinking about it, I don't think it's the same thing. Because what it is it's a technique for disrupting our normal way of processing our visual imagery, which is one of the most powerful ways we receive messages from the world. it's learning to separate what you see out of each eye by crossing the eyes. And of course, I can't do it because I have only one functional eye. But you see something differently out of each eye. This is what we don't normally understand because we our antakarana, our indriyas, process it into a single image. When we separate it, we see actually there's more there than what we're normally. It's a brujo's way of disrupting our routines. That's another one of the restraints and observances that the brujo's apprentices do. Disrupt the routines of life. And so you do that by seeing differently.
Brother Shankar?
Yes, dear.
There is also the way I think that when you put your two eyes convergent, you are looking towards the frontal lobe of the brain. Mainly the visual aspect is handled by the posterior, the occipital lobe. But here you look at the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe in the evolution came much later in the human development. And it controls your emotions, it controls your way of thinking, and it gives you a different vision. This is the reason why Lord Shankara, Lord Shiva has the eye in the front, like that, in the forehead, because this is something which gives you a perception which ordinary 20/20 vision cannot permit you to have.
Of course, yes.
And the two eyes are so distinguished. They look together, they blink together, they share eyes together, tears together, but they never meet each other.
only where their inputs are merged to create our single image of the world in the indriya, the internal sense organ.
Precisely.
Thank you for that, Bhagirath.
Excuse me, how do I find that talk that Brahmadas just mentioned?
The one that Brahmadas mentioned will be found Vedanta Society of Southern California's YouTube channel. And you just Google that and you'll pull it up, and the Swami's talk will be at 2:00 our time today. And it'll be live streamed on that YouTube channel.
Vedanta Society of Southern California.
You can also go to their website, and you'll probably find a link there. Thanks for asking, Keith. Yeah, the Sarvadevananda, this is somebody that you'll want to meet, given our conversation the other day. I mean, meet online, even if you don't meet him in person yet. He's intriguing. Hello, Marla.
Hi, yeah. I just wanted to comment that another source for people who do read the books of Carlos Castaneda, in a similar vein, is a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's a book of Toltec wisdom, and it's titled Guide to Personal Freedom, and how he also talks about some similar concepts that the way that Don Juan did, about how, we learn in childhood what is reality. Our reality is formed through, all the adults and all the people around us telling us what reality is. And
Yes.
his word for that was he called it domestication.
Yes, well, that's a good way to put it. We definitely get tamed.
And so, so that's that part of that, like we were talking about before, about shaking up your schedule, your routine, you're kind of locked in, how this is how things should be, breaking out of that domestication, it kind of includes that too, having that flexibility to be able to step out of that pattern, if you need to. So I thought that's a good resource too.
Well, the wonder of gaining this additional freedom is you step in and out of the shared reality as you see fit. In the beginning, of course, Don Gennaro was saying, I didn't dare go near that. because it would re-entrap me. He said they would push me over the precipice.
And a side note too, when I originally read this book, I was pretty sure that Don Gennaro was the coyote.
That had never occurred to me. That he himself was being Castaneda's ally. I don't know. It's certainly an interesting thought. He certainly had the power to take whatever form he wished as a brujo. That's why I don't translate that term. It's normally translated as sorcerer, and that is such a careless term in English. We have no idea what it means. So I use the word brujo just like we use the word yogi. A yogi is not a yogi is a mysterious being. So is a brujo. Any other comments or questions?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Again. In deep sleep, are we unconsciously stopping the world?
Yes. The short answer is yes. But we're not so much stopping it as suspending it. Because when we wake up in the morning, we resume where we left off. At least it seems to us that we're doing that. We put back all our upadis and put them all on like garments, and we resume the world. So to truly stop the world is to do it in waking consciousness. To dispel the ignorance and shed the upadis, shed all the blemishes, as it's said in the Chandi. Being devoted to reality, the sages shed the blemishes, shed all the blemishes. So we in unconsciousness, we suspend the world. But we're definitely closer to the bliss of our birthright, as Bhagirath so rightly pointed out. We're closer to the bliss of our birthright there than we are in any other ordinary state of consciousness. We have to work at these other state of attaining this other state of consciousness, and it's a slow process. But as we work toward the great silence, we find ourselves more and more cheerful, more and more integrated, more and more content. Doesn't mean that the world's suffering ends. It simply means that we experience it differently. And ultimately, when we are given the grace of the great silence, then our relationship with the world, as Don Gennaro pointed out, is irretrievably changed. Nothing is the same.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, dear.
So powerful, wonderful wisdom, particularly applicable in current times.
That's
what we are going through. The only way to not only protect ourselves, but to retain our sanity, we need this approach. That
yes.
We go inside and we shut out the world, not in the sense of shutting out in the sense of not attempting practically. We have to be practical. But our biggest mechanism, safeguard, is within us. And what you just said makes perfect sense. We need to rely on our own, that spatial faculty, which we all have.
Yes.
But we don't use it.
Yes, because we don't have access to it. This is what Swami Vivekananda pointed out in such emphatic and strong terms. Most people never gain access to the buddhi, never to the source of wisdom and discrimination within us, because they're so wed, they're so married to the distracting, to being distracted. So they never spend enough time in concentration, contemplation, concentration, and meditation to gain access to the buddhi. And it's only then that we begin to, when we do, that we begin to really be able to apply these great spiritual teachings in our lives. And of course, it's an interactive process. This is why if you start practicing Raja Yoga as taught by Patanjali, yes, you start with the yamas and niyamas, but you don't practice the yamas and niyamas for 10 years before you start doing asana. You begin it all together, and then you slowly and slowly gain access to your deeper inner being, the truth of your true inner being, because you have slowly and slowly dispelled that which has disguised it from you.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Brother Shankara?
Yes. Hello there, Sundar. Hello there, Niranjana.
Hello, brother.
So how many of them follow the Toltec tradition right now, or is it very organized, or how is it like?
Oh, no, they're very, they do not make themselves known. If you want to find a Toltec teacher, you can do that, but you'd have to begin to there are Toltec teachers right here in Georgia, but are they organized? Not in the sense that we think of organization. No. Do they make themselves known for the reasons that Don Gennaro explained? They do not. And it used to, this is the way it used to be in India also. You had to go into the forest and bring with you a load of firewood and prostrate yourself before someone that you found as a teacher. They didn't come out and they weren't online, so to speak. But yes, you can find these teachers if you wish, but you're not going to trip over one. I saw Paul there. Hello, Paul. How you doing?
Yeah, hello, Brother Shankara. Good. It's very good to see you and some of the Sangha.
Yes, isn't it good?
See the fellow yogis.
Or comment?
Well, with Carlos, Castaneda's writings, so one of his things I've been working with is, I'm not sure which book he discusses it, but he calls it the assemblage point.
Yes.
And that assemblage point is where your local consciousness takes on some sense of identity or some goal or some sense of history.
It's discussed in the very first book that he wrote, The Teachings of Don Juan. It's also mentioned in others. And it is a place just above your left shoulder, about half an arm's distance out, or to a full arm's distance out. It's a point on the etheric egg that surrounds us. That is where we've learned to assemble that which is touching the etheric egg. We can move that assembly point, and that's the purpose of all spiritual practice, is to move that assembly or assemblage point to other places on the egg. And of course, an accomplished brujo can move to any place on the egg, and so they just have a virtually unlimited palette of experience. But you know, it's just like in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. What's the point? You know, you try to align yourself with the highest truth and abide there, as Krishna says over and over in the Gita. You abide in the highest truth. And but you know, I can imagine that it must be you know, we see this in the Star Wars movies, how, you know, the wizards or the Jedi Knights or whoever they are can create different realities. Obi-Wan Kenobi can change the nature of someone the reality of the person he's walking with by just a gesture of his hand.
Yeah.
So yes, but it is very interesting to think about the assembly point or assemblage point.
Well, even you know the pardon me, you know, the awareness, you know, my awareness of my own assemblage point, and I see the kind of the assemblage point of other people, and I see, you know, some people seem to be panicking around the coronavirus pandemic.
Yes.
And I see myself, you know, my own, as a retired person, it really, I mean, I was staying at home most of the time anyway.
Right.
You know, it didn't have much of it hasn't had much of an impact on me. And I'm wondering too, you know, how I can reach out and support other people that are struggling with the virus, or are struggling just from the consequences of the economic and the whole 9 yards.
Well, keep looking, and I'm sure you'll come up with good answers. You know, the people who are panicking, to give that a cold-eyed look, Don Juan would say there are people, and Castaneda is one of them, who they indulge in fear. They do that out of ignorance. This is not a judgment or saying that they're bad people. It's just that that's what they do. Some people indulge in fear. Some people indulge in food. Some people indulge in fast motorcycles. You know, we have all kinds of ways of distracting ourselves. Fear is a good one. Fear and doubt are real handy to us. And so
I've noticed I've been doing, you know, I guess a concern, you know, I've been spending a lot of time on my sailboat up on Lake and kind of isolating up on the boat and doing a little fishing.
Yeah.
And watching a lot of movies and stuff at home. And I guess that indulging in self-indulgence.
If that's what you want to call it. Yeah. Well, it's that spending the time on the boat out on the lake sounds like a lovely way to spend some time. Particularly if you've retired, you've earned the right. You know, you can spend your time as you damn well please.
Yes. But I think, I guess, of course, you know, there's always that awareness that there are people that do not have a roof over their head, and they do not have internet capacities or facilities, and you know, they are. I guess there's I'm not even sure if I actually feel guilty, or I feel like I should feel guilty, or I should be doing more.
Well,
or even
you can support the Clifton Men's Shelter. You can support the Atlanta Community Food Bank. You can support the American Red Cross or the Salvation Army. All of these people are doing wonderful work right now. Wonderful work in response to all of this. You can give money to Doctors Without Borders. You know, Dr. Majmudar Bhagirat will speak to us on the 19th about what the medical professionals are doing. It is purely overwhelmingly awesome what these people are they are really wearing their caduceus. They are saying it's far beyond do no harm. They are extending themselves, working extremely long hours, putting themselves in harm's way to try to save lives. It shows us this is the divine working through the hands and eyes and ears and thoughtfulness of these medical professionals. And so on the 19th, he's going to tell us about it, and I'm really looking forward to what he has to say.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Shankara. It's really good just to check in with the fellowship, Atlanta Vedanta Fellowship. I've missed coming over and enjoying your company and all the festivities we normally would have on a Sunday afternoon.
Yes, I miss it too. But this is a way of getting together and being together, and I'm very glad of it.
Thank you.
Jai Ma, Jai Shri Ramakrishna. Anybody else want to chime in? Okay.
I wanted to say one last little thing was that
yes.
I'm normally used to, when I come to the center, I donate in person, but since we're not in person, I was trying to figure out how to donate, and I did see on the website that there is a PayPal. There's a way to go on the website. There's a form, and we could donate via PayPal. So just
you can do that, or you can mail in a check. A lot of people who are kindly and disposed that way mail us a check. Either one works just well. But thank you for mentioning that, Marla. That's it. We continue to need support, of course. Expenses don't disappear because our ability to meet face-to-face disappears. But thank you for mentioning that.
I wanted to get some feedback from the group. Are there risks in getting fast food takeout now, like Taco Bell or anything, if we go out this afternoon? Anyone know?
I haven't read anything about there being risks to getting takeout food. Has anybody else read anything or heard anything about there being risks to getting takeout food?
So this is Keith. Actually, I'm a sales rep for DoorDash. And so it has been shown that it is still safe to get takeout. Anything you bring into your house, obviously you want to wipe it down with Lysol once you get inside, like the bags or whatever. But for the most part, there's been no indication that it's not safe.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Just wash your hands for the 20 seconds that you need to once you get back inside, and wipe down whatever bags you got. You should be fine based upon the science we have so far.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one suggestion, Brother Shankar.
Yes.
About foods, try not to take the salads that are cold foods. They are more dangerous than the physically warm foods.
I see.
Or they can heat it up. So the heat kind of kills them.
Yes. Right.
Just a suggestion.
Okay. Well, this is a strange time we're living in. This is a time of a dreadful transformation. Yama is prowling the earth. Rama talks about this Vashishta talks about this to Rama in the Vashishta Yoga Sutra. This is the sign of an end of an age. And so there's in this upcoming edition of American Vedantist, which should be published in the next week, we are publishing a song by Eliza Gilkison called The Great Correction, and also a message from a Hopi elder named White Eagle about this time of transformation. It's So any of you who aren't signed up already for American Vedantist, you can go online, just look it up online and sign up for a subscription. It's free. It's an online magazine, American Vedantist, and then you'll receive it by email. As I say, the next edition will be published by the end of this coming week. So shall the ending prayer for peace be chanted?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that. Just one last call for anything else from anyone that wants to make a contribution.
Really fast, Brother Shankara. After we're done, could I get you on Solar for just like 2 minutes? I just want to ask about a couple of books, just really fast. But I don't want to tie everybody's time up with it.
What do you want to do? You want to just invite me on Zoom to a meeting? Is that what you want to do?
I don't know how to do that from my computer. I could do it from another one, but I was just hoping you could stay on here for 2 minutes once everybody gets off, and then.
Sure. Okay. Well, I won't end the meeting then. We'll just let everybody's. All right. Here we go.
Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Sorry. I just thought I'd mention once more that starting tomorrow at Spirituality and Practice, Philip Goldberg is going to be talking about practical wisdom from 6 legendary yogis. These are yogis who came to the West. And so he's going to be talking about Swamiji, Paramahansa Yogananda, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Satchidananda, and Swami Muktananda, in case anybody might be interested. So.
For those of you who don't know the short form of the name Swami Vivekananda, she mentioned Swamiji, that's Swami Vivekananda. Our beloved Swami Vivekananda is called Swamiji. So thank you, Lori. Thank you for that.
Along that lines, Vedanta Society of San Diego is going to be giving a 6-class Vedanta online series. They're going to be Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. And if anyone's interested, I'll post the link to register for the class, and it's free.
Yeah, please do post the link on the if you want to do it on the Vedanta Center's website. I don't mean the website, I mean Facebook page. Post it on our Facebook page, and Cindy will put it up there for you.
Okay, and I'll post it in this chat session too, if anybody is interested.
Okay, very good. Okay. Any other last minute thoughts? Okay, well, chant with me. Let there be peace in outer space.
Let there be peace in outer space.
Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters.
Let there be peace in the sky and the earth and in the waters.
Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees.
Let there be peace in the herbs and the plants and the trees.
May the gods be peaceful.
May the gods be peaceful.
May the whole universe be pervaded by peace.
May the whole universe be pervaded by peace.
Let this infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being.
Let this infinite universal peace prevail throughout my entire being.
Om Shanti
Shanti.
Shanti. Peace, peace,
Peace
be unto us and to all beings everywhere. So thank you all for coming. I have no idea how many of us there were, but seemed like a very nice number. And so this is the way we're meeting now. We have Tuesday nights, we're meeting at 8 p.m. To read and discuss the life of Sri Sharada Devi as presented to us by Swami Vivekananda. On Wednesday evenings, we're studying Bhagavad Gita. We'll start chapter 3 on this coming Wednesday. On Saturday mornings, we're discussing a collection of the talks by, reading and discussing as a collection of talks by Swami Prabhavananda, published as a book called Realizing God. And then on this coming Sunday, which will be Easter, I'll be speaking on resurrection. And it won't be the normal talk about resurrection. It'll be about the Christian resurrection, but it'll also be about the resurrection that will come after this transformation that we're experiencing, what the opportunities for us as spiritual aspirants are for resurrection after this transformation has run its course. So, Jai, 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 Shri Ramakrishna, Jai Ma, Durga, Durga, Durga.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you.
And I'm sticking around, Keith. All the rest of you can sign off if you like.
Thank you, brother.
I guess I could get started. It'll be super quick. So the 4 books you told me to read, I've done the Ramakrishna book. I've done the initiation book. The other 2 books are not available in ebooks. I'm gonna have to order them, and of course I can't just come in there and pick them up. So they're gonna take.
Yeah, you can. You can come in and pick them up. You can come in here and pick them up.
Okay.
They're in our bookshop. The chapel is open every day from about 7 or 7:30 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night.
Okay.
You're welcome to come in and just take them off the rack. The Short Life of Holy Mother, The Short Life of Vivekananda, and so you found the Spiritual Initiation book.
Mm-hmm. Found that one already. Already read that one.
Okay. Well, the other 2 are available here, or you can order them from Vedanta.com.
Yeah, I was probably going to order them from Vedanta.com at the point where we're not really supposed to be going anywhere but essential places, and they're starting to set up roadblocks in different places, so they'll stop you and ask you.
Really? I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Right here in Georgia.
Right in Georgia. You're not supposed to really leave your place unless you're going to get some food or for medical purpose. Other than that, and you can do some outside.
Then you can order those 2 little books from Vedanta.com. They're very inexpensive.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'll definitely do it. In the meantime, I was hoping, and the Love Poems from God, I'm going to go ahead and pick that up. Is there anything else that I could be reading to try to get a grasp on everything? Either maybe one of Vivekananda Swamiji's books.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Any of the 4 books by Vivekananda on the yogas, whichever one appeals to your heart most, that's Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of devotion. Okay. Karma Yoga, which is the yoga of action. Okay. That is a very, very potent book for right now.
Karma Yoga? Okay.
Karma Yoga by Swami Vivekananda. Again, you can order that from Vedanta.com. And then, of course, there's Raja Yoga, which is it's a workbook. If you want a further exposition of that, Swami Prabhavananda's How to Know God, he wrote that because so many Western disciples found themselves wading in too deep a water in Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga. So Swami Prabhavananda wrote How to Know God as a further amplification of that. So that's Raja Yoga. And then Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, once again, if you want, that was the book that just set me on fire in 1975. Okay. I couldn't quite believe that somebody had said so clearly what I wanted to believe in was true. And so that book literally I was just inflamed by that book. And it really, I was already headed down this path because of Swami Prabhavananda, but that book really set me afire.
Okay, that's what I needed. Just wanted to get a couple of books to get started with while I waited on these other ones to get here.
All right, very good.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, brother. Good. Glad you were here.
Yeah, glad I was here too. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Cindy, are you still there? Cindy? Are you still there? Apparently not.